My name is Elias Voss. I am a cadet at the Threxian Joint Military Academy. I am also the only human who has ever studied here. Nobody planned for that to happen. I was chosen because two nations, mine and theirs, wanted to prove that humans and aliens could work together. I did not feel like a symbol of peace. I felt like a stranger in a very tall building, surrounded by creatures with 4 eyes and long memories. For 11 months, I tried to stay quiet. I studied. I trained. I did not complain, even when the gravity settings were turned up, because someone thought humans needed toughening. I told myself that if I worked hard and stayed humble, nobody would notice me. That plan worked until the day they announced the Kravith Gauntlet. The Gauntlet is the biggest event of the year at the Academy. It is a full training exercise, done outdoors, with real terrain and real weather. The weapons are not deadly, but they are strong enough to leave bruises and to end your turn in the exercise fast. Every cadet fears it a little. Every cadet also wants to prove themselves in it. It has been part of the Academy for 300 years. Every single class, from every single species, has followed the same basic idea. 2 teams, 1 tower to capture. Whoever holds it when the sun goes down wins. I remember sitting in the briefing room that morning. Commandant Skorath explained the exercise like it was the simplest thing in the world. 2 forces, 1 ridge, 1 relay tower in the middle. Whoever controls the tower by evening is declared the winner. It sounded fair on the surface, but the longer I listened, the more I realized something. This version of fair was built for creatures who had always fought the same way. Line up, move forward together. Trust that the bigger group with the stronger weapons would win. It was not really about being clever, it was about being big and loud and confident. I raised my hand and asked a simple question. I asked if there were any rules against using tricks or hidden movement. Skorath blinked all 4 of his eyes at the same time, which I had learned meant surprise. He told me that using tricks was technically allowed, but no cadet in the history of the Academy had ever tried it in a serious way. Combat here, he explained, was about honor. It was about facing your opponent directly. I did not argue with him. I just wrote the answer down in my notes and thought about it for the rest of the day. That evening, I met with my squad. We were 9 cadets total, coming from 4 different species. None of them looked excited to have me on their team. I understood why. In their eyes, I was slower, weaker, and less experienced than almost everyone else in the exercise. I decided not to correct that idea. I let them believe whatever they wanted. It was easier that way, and it gave me time to think without anyone watching too closely. That night, instead of sleeping early like the rest of my squad, I studied maps. The Academy did not keep its terrain data very secret, because nobody before me had ever thought to use it this way. I found dry riverbeds that cut through the middle of the battlefield. I found a steep ridge on the northern side that the sensors barely covered, because no one believed a person could climb it while carrying gear. And I found a supply area behind the enemy's main position that would likely be left with only a few guards, since most of their soldiers would be busy holding the front line. By the time I finished planning, I understood something important. This exercise was not really about strength. It was about surprise. And surprise was something my culture understood very well, even if this academy had never seen it used before. The next morning, I explained my plan to my squad. I split us into 3 small teams. The first team would move forward the normal way, the way every cadet had been trained to move, loud and visible, following textbook formations. This would draw the enemy's full attention. The second team would use the dry riverbeds to sneak toward the supply area and quietly take it out of the fight. And the third team, which I would lead, would climb the northern ridge that nobody defended, because nobody thought it was possible to climb. My squadmates were not convinced. One of them, a Threxian named Voss, asked me directly if humans sometimes wanted to lose on purpose. I told him no. I told him this was called strategy, and that he would understand it better once he saw it in action. At exactly 2 in the afternoon, the exercise began. My first team advanced exactly the way Threxian doctrine expected. They moved forward together, calling out positions, following the textbook pattern that every instructor at the academy had been teaching for centuries. The enemy team reacted exactly as predicted. Every sensor, every set of eyes, turned toward that obvious advance. While that was happening, my second team moved quietly through the dry riverbeds. They reached the supply area in under 10 minutes and disabled it without any noise or alarm. The enemy commander did not even notice at first. He was too busy watching the front line, confident that his side had the advantage. And I went up the ridge. It was harder than I expected. The gravity here felt heavier than it should. My legs burned with every step, and I slipped twice on loose rock, scraping my arm badly enough that I could feel it sting through my sleeve. But nobody was watching that slope. Nobody in 300 years had ever needed to defend it, because nobody had ever thought a person could climb it while carrying full gear. When I finally reached the top, I was breathing hard and covered in dust. Below me, about 40 meters away, stood 4 guards near the relay tower. They looked relaxed. They were talking quietly among themselves, clearly not expecting anyone to approach from this direction. I stayed low and moved carefully, using the last bit of cover the ridge offered. I did not shout a challenge. I did not wait for them to notice me first. I used 2 flash devices to create a short burst of light and sound, enough to confuse them for a few seconds without hurting anyone. In that moment of confusion, I moved quickly and tagged 2 of the guards with stun markers before they even understood what was happening. The other 2 turned toward me, startled, but by then, I had already reached the control panel of the tower. The simulation system recognized the capture almost immediately. A calm voice announced that the tower had changed control. The exercise clock stopped. It was 2:47 in the afternoon. My team had ended the exercise in under an hour, faster than any recorded attempt in the Academy's long history. For a moment, nobody moved. The guards near the tower looked at each other, unsure what had just happened. My own squad mates, watching from a distance through their headsets, were completely silent. When we returned for the debrief, the room felt tense in a way I had never experienced before. Commandant Skorath reviewed the replay footage carefully, watching every step of my path up the ridge, every second of the confusion at the tower. He did not speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was calm, but his 4 eyes blinked slowly, one after another, which I now understood was his version of deep thought. One of the cadets from the opposing team, a large Grenoxy named Threll, stood up and said that what I did was not fair. He said that I had not fought properly. He said that true combat was supposed to be direct, with both sides facing each other honestly, and that sneaking around the side was a kind of trick that dishonored the exercise. I looked at him and said something simple. I told him that I had won, and that he could either accept that or explain how losing was somehow more honorable than winning. He did not have a good answer for that. Commandant Skorath raised a hand, and the room went quiet again. He spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. He said that in 300 years, no cadet had ever questioned the basic idea behind the gauntlet. Every class before mine had accepted the same rules, the same patterns, the same way of solving the problem. I was the first person to look at the exercise and realize that the real challenge was not in following the rules perfectly. It was in understanding that the rules themselves could be rethought. He said that I did not fight the enemy's way better than they did. Instead, I had refused to fight their way at all, and had built something new in its place. He admitted that this idea made some of the older instructors uncomfortable, because it challenged traditions that had lasted for centuries. But he also said that the Academy existed to prepare cadets for real challenges, not just for familiar ones, and that what I had done deserved real respect. Threxians cannot smile the way humans do. Their faces are not built for it. But something in the way Skorath stood, the way his shoulders relaxed slightly, told me that he meant what he said. It was a strange feeling, being respected by someone so different from me, but it felt real all the same. In the weeks that followed, the Academy quietly changed the rules of the gauntlet. They added new sections about creative movement, about using terrain in unexpected ways, and about the value of misdirection. Some instructors were unhappy about the change. They believed it broke tradition and made the exercise less pure. Others were excited, saying that it made the training more realistic and more useful for actual challenges cadets might face later in their careers. My squad mates treated me differently after that day. Bassos, the same cadet who had asked if I wanted to lose on purpose, came up to me afterward and admitted that he had never imagined an approach like mine. He said it made him think differently about strategy in general, not just about that one exercise. I told him that back on Earth, this kind of thinking was not considered unusual at all. It was just one more way of solving a problem. Word about the exercise spread quickly around the academy. Some cadets in the hallways started using a new phrase whenever they talked about clever, unexpected plans. They called it doing a Voss. At first, it embarrassed me a little, hearing my name used that way, but over time, I started to feel proud of it instead. I never wanted to be a symbol when I first arrived at this academy. I only wanted to learn, to do my job well, and to avoid causing any trouble. But that single training exercise changed how people here saw humans, and in a smaller way, it changed how I saw myself too. I learned that being different is not something to hide. Sometimes, being different is exactly what helps you see a solution that everyone else has missed for 300 years. I still remember standing at the top of that ridge, tired and covered in dust, looking down at the tower below me. In that moment, I was not thinking about being humanity's representative, or about proving anything to anyone. I was simply thinking about the plan, the terrain, and the next step forward. Maybe that is the real lesson from that day. Sometimes the biggest change does not come from trying to prove a point. It comes from quietly doing what makes sense, and letting the results speak for themselves.